Superstars in, superstars out, unfortunately. It is post-Mania. A lot of moving, a lot of shaking. We're going to talk about it and more. This is Wrestle Extra. Oh, this is a Wrestle Extra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate. Always joined by my tag team partner. Say his name, he shall appear. The all-knowing Gerard Bonner, my friend. It was, I believe, was it a Saturday? Was it a Friday or a Saturday evening? I can't even remember what
it was. It was a Friday, yeah. Friday evening here, probably Saturday morning to you. Yeah.
Saturday morning. That's correct. That's correct. News began to go rife. First, we heard about the members of the Wyatt Six, one by one, and then the other, I think it was like 18 in total, 24 in total. Superstars from the main roster, from development, from NXT, being named as people who have departed, whether it was contracts ending, contracts being cut, people being released, however you want to put it. 24 people have parted ways with the WWE. Of course, of all of those, the biggest ones I've mentioned, first the Wyatt Six, then on the main roster, the other, I guess most people are talking about the surprise ones, or yeah, quite shockingly, were Aleister Black and Kairi Sane. Both were heavily involved week to week in some kind of way on SmackDown and on Raw. But then we also heard the news of Apollo Crews being let go. Apollo Crews, of course, a former United States and Intercontinental Champion, joined WWE, I believe it was in 2015. Came through NXT, moved to the main roster relatively quickly compared to most. Some people were, in two minds of whether that should have been a thing or not. Like I said, he found his way to 2 championships in his time, but he missed a lot. I think it was at least 11 months of 2025 out with injury. Made some kind of comeback earlier this year. He was seen on main event. He appeared at least twice in AAA. So we had this idea or feeling that there was some kind of comeback for Apollo Crews, some kind of way back for him in WWE. But then, of course, we got the news that we did on the weekend. As these names started rolling out and you saw Apollo Crews, what was your first thought when you saw that name appear?
Well, let me start by saying it's never a good day for anyone to lose their job. Doesn't matter what field you're in. It doesn't matter how qualified we think you are or are not. It is never a good moment for anyone to lose their job. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all of the talent who has been released. Unfortunately, we have been around long enough to know that usually after the high of WrestleMania comes the low of releases. And it's kind of a weird space to be in. And, we've kind of prepped ourselves for it. I think there might have been one year, probably in the last, 9-10 years where that didn't happen. And that was, of course, when the sale of WWE was in process. I think specifically speaking about Apollo Crews, he had when I say he had a great run, I mean, he was in WWE for a lengthy period of time. And I don't think that his main roster run in any way reflected the greatness we saw in NXT. He came into NXT in that black and gold era where they were signing great independent stars, and he came in as a hot prospect. He came in very, very highly touted. Certainly did not spend a lot of time in NXT. In fact, went back to NXT and had, I think, a fairly solid run. But for whatever reason, Apollo Crews never really clicked. Even when he went the route of embracing his Nigerian roots and won the Intercontinental Championship from Big E at WrestleMania, which was a crowning moment. He kind of had the machine behind him at that point, but it still didn't translate. So this to me is one of those cases where certain things just aren't the best. And it kind of feels like, Apollo Crews perhaps could find success in other spaces. You hear things back and forth, and I don't have enough to say how true some of the things are that I've heard, but I'll just say that I think Apollo Crews may be in a scenario where, being released, as we've seen for several other talents, could be a good opportunity for him to go into certain spaces that might be more amenable to his style and to what it is that he wants to do. I think that's one of the wild things here. We don't know what Apollo Crews' goals ultimately are. And how he'd like to go about those. So my hope is that, with this particular release, that he's able to figure out where he wants to go, what he wants to do, and can find success, whatever success looks like for him.
In your mind, what do you think didn't work? Because in terms of the common metric of success in the business, I guess the most success he had was during that period where he did, the Nigerian gimmick, and he had the accent change. And, I remember, me and Mex talking about it when he first came around, and we were like, what is going on? What is this? Is he from Nigeria or Wakanda? Like, what is this? What's going on?
Right.
But then it started to make sense. It actually started to, it was like, okay, it's actually working out for him. This is now making sense. Then all of a sudden, disappeared again. What do you think, just within his time in WWE, what do you think was missing? What do you think, was there something that was missing, or was it just the case of WWE not knowing how to really book him correctly?
I think it's a couple of things. People talk about whether or not WWE books people well, but I like to look at this, as much as we can be inside the business, if you take a step back as a fan, you ask yourself a simple question. Do I want to see him on my television screen? Do I want to see him on my television screen? Is there something that connects with one way or the other? Like, do I love him? Do I dislike him? Is there any degree of connection? And I just didn't feel the kind of connection. Perhaps to me, while the Nigerian space worked, I liked his second run in NXT. I felt like, he had a chance to go in as a veteran, accomplish some things that he didn't accomplish the first time. And again, here's the tough part. Consistency is also an issue. If you're going to do the Nigerian thing, commit all the way, so after losing the title, and disappearing, then he comes back as the Apollo Crews of old. And it was just like, So we didn't have anything to latch onto. And what we have seen in WWE spaces, and really anywhere, is while I've had a bunch of discussions with people about, WWE, they have to write better and all those things, but somebody still has to fill the role. And on top of that, you have to be willing to have that extra thing that says, hey, you might have wrote the music for me, but I'm going to play it and present it in a way that's undeniable. And I don't think Apollo Crews did that. He didn't do that. I don't know if he just felt like my athleticism is going to be enough, but he did not connect with us to the point where I went, I want to see him. I wanted to see him in his first run in NXT. I wanted to see him when he came to the main roster. But then somewhere in there, it changed. And it was like, even when he came back this last time, it was just like, oh, he's back. But it didn't mean anything. And so, you have to go out there and make us care. whether it's your move set, whether it's your, you know, story, your connection, your conversation, something has to connect. So I think for him, perhaps he didn't think it was important enough to have that connecting factor, and it just didn't connect.
I think for me, what maybe didn't quite go well was maybe he should have stayed in NXT that first time for a little bit longer, because that was where, you know, he would have had the chance to develop some kind of character, develop his mic skills. While his in-ring ability was there was no question of that. His athleticism, what he could do in the ring, his move set, all of that was incredible, and it still is today. I think it was lacking in that commitment to a character, or that commitment to the charisma, because when he did do the Nigerian thing, as I said earlier, you know, he convinced me. I was like, at first, what is this? Then I was like, okay, let's keep this going, let's commit. And what reminds me of that is, you know, when we talk about a commitment to a character that at first we didn't think would work, or seemed to be so far-fetched from the person we've seen before, it's working for Ludwig Kaiser, and, you know, as Grande Americano. It's working for Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate as Rayo and Bravo. It's not supposed to work, but because of the commitment they have to it, it's now working massively. So, you know, it shows that there is that as well. So yeah, it is unfortunate, you know, that he's gone. It's unfortunate that, you know, throughout most of his time, he was kind of, you know, kind of on an uphill battle, in a sense, whether that was himself, whether that was the booking, whether that was the belief in him, whatever it was, whoever's fault or, you know, the reason behind it is, it was always an uphill struggle for Apollo, especially as soon as he came onto the main roster. You know, so it is unfortunate that he's now gone the way that he has. I imagine it's not on his own terms, in the sense of, obviously it wasn't necessarily his decision to make. But I'm sure more than confident that he'll find some level of success, a consistent level of success, whether that be on the indies, whether we expect to see him find his friend Ricochet in AEW, or find, you know, he's got friends all over the place. He's got Moose in TNA and obviously others as well. So, you know, he's still got his connections. As I said, he can still go in the ring. That's definitely not something that's disappeared. So he's got, you know, a chance, and more than enough skills to keep going in the business and make success of himself outside of WWE. The other surprising departure, I guess, for us, within our space, was probably TYRA-MAE STEELE, the former Olympic gold medalist. She won the first season of LFG as well, but never really made any kind of impact once winning that contract. Again, I asked the question, what do you think didn't work out for TYRA-MAE STEELE in WWE?
You know, it's interesting because I think certainly of all of the releases, while some might say TYRA-MAE STEELE may have been the most surprising, again, we're looking at, did people make the connection? And I think on paper, this is one of those cases where you're like, oh, this should be a slam dunk. She's an Olympic gold medalist. As a woman, we've never seen that. And as a Black woman, we've never seen that. So like all of the never seens, one-of-one moments that you have, she had. But again, it is being able to connect. She went through a couple of spaces. On one hand, it was, hey, I'm the Olympic gold medalist. I'm happy to be here. You know, on the other thing, it's like, well, then kind of, you know, dealing with, well, will I be a heel? Will I not? Do I have an edge? Do I not? I think, again, kind of what we talked about with Apollo Crews is, can you commit? I'm just, so I feel like there are people, and this happens both in and out of wrestling, who feel like my accolades are enough, right? I am an Olympic gold medalist. Let's go back to Gable Steveson. You know, Gable Steveson, his accolades should have been enough. He's Gable Steveson. He did all these things in the NCAA. He, you know, won a gold medal, highly touted. They apparently took a ring to where he was so that he could train and all the other things. And it's like, why didn't you connect? Because ultimately, I think people don't understand that in the world of WWE, it is World Wrestling Entertainment. And one of the things that often happens in the amateur ranks of sports in general is the entertainment factor isn't a thing. It's all about your athleticism and your skill. So we look to go, oh, wow, great. They got the gold medal. They performed. They beat this record. But how entertaining are you? And so I think for TYRA-MAE STEELE, that became the issue. Even when she was on LFG, oh, I hate to say this publicly, but we've kind of said this before. It very much felt like she shouldn't have won. It felt like the other young lady whose name I can't remember right now, it's escaping me, was slated to win, you know, but they said, well, we can put Tyra on TV right now. She's got a ready-made story. And I kind of feel like this was Tyra's opportunity. You know, you got the LFG rub. You're the first female winner. Go out there and kill it. So to me, this isn't an issue of LFG because you look at their other stars and the other winners did well, you know. This has got, and to think for Tyra, she had that moment where she came out on NXT and then she was down in Evolve, which seems wild to me. So she just didn't have what it took to connect. And I find that unfortunate for someone who seemingly loved pro wrestling. She just never got out of the blocks to where we would look at her and care about her outside of her accolades. Of course, you know, you think about, everybody makes the comparison to Kurt Angle, the Olympic gold medalist who came in and crushed it. Here was the thing about Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle was entertaining, people. Like, we keep ignoring the fact that what made Kurt Angle special was not just that he was an incredible athlete, but he was entertaining. When I think about Kurt Angle, you know, you think about, he was good. You know, he was darn good, right? Like he was that. He had the three eyes, right? He had the moment where he was backstage. I mean, the image in my head right now is Kurt Angle backstage with that little hat on, playing the guitar in front of Vince McMahon and Steve Austin, right? He was willing to be entertaining. And I think for both Apollo, for TYRA-MAE, when you get the light on, you've got to be entertaining. And I don't mean sell your soul. You know, I'm not saying step and fetch it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's in the name, wrestling entertainment. If you can't entertain, that's the problem. And I think that was it for Tyra is, okay, after we get past the fact that you're an Olympic gold medalist and you have a great look, what can you do that keeps us connected? And I don't think she was able to figure that out, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think for me, the unfortunate part is, you know, her time in WWE was up and down from day one. From when she signed at the same time as Gable Steveson, but no one knew. You know, she made a random appearance. Her first appearance, I believe, was either on NXT or Level Up, which again kind of unnoticed, although it was made a thing of online, but then kind of made a notice. Then she appears on LFG, like after she's been there for 2 years. Why is she there on LFG as an Olympic gold medalist and this, that? But then had this bravado about her, like she felt she shouldn't be there, like this was beneath her. Okay, no problem. But then she couldn't deliver on that mindset. And again, like you said, you know, we then questioned whether she should have won. Okay, she did. She then turns up on NXT. No one cared. Had whatever she had with Ethan Page and Chelsea Green, with Tavion Heights by her side. Again, flash in the pan. She was gone the following week. Uninvolved. We thought, okay. Let's get back to basics. Let's go to Evolve. Let's bring her back in front of some ladies who are a little bit fresher than her, and she can probably show how good she is there. Again, a Kendall Gray, a Callie Armstrong. Yeah, not quite. You know what I mean? Right. And it is unfortunate to say all these things. And you know, yes, someone's gone, and you know, it's never good for anyone to lose their job. And it's not a case of being happy that someone's gone or left, you know, or been made to lose their job or however it is. But when you start to think and look at some of the things, you're like, okay, you know, a lot of the time, I think there's a lot of discussion when these things happen that, you know, some people will say, oh, you know, so-and-so was never given a chance and this person wasn't given an opportunity and they didn't use them right and they didn't try this and they didn't try. With TYRA-MAE, they tried. They tried.
Yes.
I can't look at any situation, and especially given the whole LFG thing where it's a lot more of a documentary, so we're kind of seeing a bit more of the discussions and the backstage and all that kind of stuff. They tried. They definitely did. And it just didn't work. It just didn't work. And as I said, I feel as though, and I think it came out in LFG in that first season, about halfway through, where there was almost like this bravado to where she felt she couldn't be told anything, you know, and she was ready-made and blah, blah, blah. And it just didn't, it just wasn't the case. It just wasn't the case. And as you said, the one thing that was missing was her kind of finding the entertainment factor, but then also an X factor that I guess can't be taught.
Yes.
You know, it can't be taught, and that's unfortunate for her. You know, the story writes itself, all of that, and that's true, but the connection just didn't work. And I think for me, what it does as well, you mentioned Gable Steveson, what it does for me as well is just magnify even more how much a phenomenon Kurt Angle really was.
Absolutely.
Because we have seen so many people who have come in from that same type of background. And, you know, we can name one or two where success has been a thing. Dolph Ziggler's one of them. Chad Gable, you can talk about. We've got high hopes still for Tavion Heights. Kendall Gray's another one who's coming through that background. But then to add on top Olympic gold medalist, you're thinking, all right, this is going to be it. But no, the two other Olympic gold medalists that have followed Kurt Angle didn't work. Just didn't work. Didn't work. So it's not just, as you said, it's not just accolades. It's not just mat work. It's not just skill level that does it in this business. It has to be more than that. There has to be some kind of character, connection, that X factor. That, again, unfortunately, yes, you can teach promo work. Yes, you can teach mic skills, but there's just something that you can't teach that was just missing.
Let me throw two other things in there that I think are important, and I don't think people are considering. One of those things is that, you know, you have got to believe in who you are. You know, when we talk about the intangibles, you know, you can't, every wrestler who has been great, that has had massive connection with people, they always talk about how it is who they are turned up a notch or turned up 10 notches or what have you. So to do that, you have to believe in who you are. You know, you look at the longevity of the New Day. The New Day, who was not supposed, I mean, this was a last ditch effort for them, you know, before we put them on the chopping block. And they believed in who they were, and who they were authentically was very different than how Black people were presented. You know, now you're showing people who are fun loving, people who are happy, people who love video games and bright colors. We hadn't seen that in 2013, 2014, 2015. You know, and they tried to put them, you know, first kind of as a church gimmick, had them in the church and that type of stuff. But they believed in themselves, and they were willing to do the work that showed everybody else, oh no, we're the real deal. I think she had to, and other people, you got to believe in who you are, because if you don't, people will hand you things that just don't work, and you'll just sit there and take it. And the second thing I'll say is this: let us never forget that as people of color, when you go on anybody's job, you always have to be twice as good to get half as much. And do not think that you become in that because you come in highly touted, that all of a sudden they're going to think, oh, you're an Olympic gold medalist, you're going to be fine. No, at the end of the day, if you don't want to be on the chopping block, you always have to provide a level of value where they say, we can't do this without her. We can't do this without him. And if we're not doing that, we put ourselves, unfortunately, in the position to be considered when they have, because here's what we know. If we're talking about WWE, if as fans we know this, clearly when you come in the door as an employee, you have to know, okay, at right around WrestleMania, they're going to be considering these conversations. So how do I keep my name out of that room? I want my name in certain rooms. That's not the room I want my name in, unless it's accompanied by, we can't do it without him. And I think sometimes people get so comfortable in the fact that, oh, I made it. Oh, I'm good. Oh, I'm safe. No. Put yourself in the position where you go, hey, I have to be undeniable. I have to provide a level of value that makes them say, oh, we can't even include them in this conversation. And I think if you don't do those two things, you run the risk of, unfortunately, being in that kind of conversation.
And you know what? You know, you mentioned her being, of course, well, everyone being Black. The other thing for TYRA-MAE, and this is very true, however brilliant and great the women's division is and has been recently in NXT, her being a female makes a massive difference as well. It's another uphill battle for her that she had to face and had to struggle with. You know, that's just the reality of the situation. Being also Black added on top of that. Then on top of that, you're coming with these accolades that in some ways you shouldn't have, or to many people you're not allowed to have, because you're Black, because you're a woman. So you being an Olympic gold medalist, okay, well, show me what you got then. Like it's kind of, you know, there's going to be a lot of people who would have that attitude towards her. And unfortunately, that went against her as well. There's so many others, you know, who have departed as well, who are coming from that development sector. I'll go through some of the names. So you've got Tyreek Igwe and Tyson DuPont, who are a tag team. Malik Blade, True London, who we saw on LFG season 2, and then Chris Ireland, who appeared on both seasons of LFG. If any of those you would say would be a shock, or would you know, say that you're not surprised? Like out of all of those, who stood out for you from the rest of that list?
I think there was more in the tank for Tyson DuPont and Tyreek Igwe. I enjoyed them as a tag team. I think they offered something physically that most didn't. I would have loved to have seen them really get to build some more as a tag team. I think what was challenging for them is when Wes Lee was gone, That was probably their best shot when they were with Wesley. They seemingly had a purpose. They had somebody leading them. They found themselves in TNA for a little while, being involved in kind of in that crossover moment. And why that's unfortunate to me is I feel like as much as we talk about the women's division in NXT, the tag team division in NXT has been challenging. And when I say challenging, I mean, it's not been filled with a ton of stars and a ton of opportunities. Well, let me take that back. It's not the opportunity situation. I think the opportunities have been wide open in the tag team division. And I think that they could have taken advantage of that in some way. I mean, if you think about the tag teams, Hank and honestly, when Fraxium lost the tag titles, there has not been another great tag team that stepped up, Correct. So you had Hank and Tank, which I still am. I'm just starting to kind of believe in Hank and Tank, but I didn't really believe in them. I believe far more in Igwe and DuPont if they could have found the thing, because they're physically intimidating. These guys should be throwing people around. They should be just wearing people out because of how big they are. But, again, size doesn't necessarily translate to skill. So I would have loved to have seen them take advantage of the wide open space that was the NXT tag team division.
Hank and Tank remind me of the what were they called? Heavy Machinery. That's the one that
yes.
So in NXT they were great. They were fun. They were it's that craziness, all the rest of it. But you're kind of thinking, would that translate on the main roster, or how would it? Right. You know what I mean? Or it'll be a flash in the pan. It won't last long, maybe, that kind of stuff. I almost feel like that's kind of happened on NXT already. And unfortunately as well, here's the other thing for me with Tyreek and Tyson is that they were almost like a very similar but less gritty version of OTM.
Yes, I agree.
So that's why the timing for them just didn't work. Yeah. It's not to say that they didn't have potential, that they couldn't go. I think it was just a timing thing. Then on top of that, you've got the big guys in Dark State, again, another tag team. Again, timing, everyone's looking the same or very similar. How did they stand out? They didn't or couldn't stand out. Their best bet, yes, was with Wesley. But again, Wesley was in a fight himself.
Yes,
so
that's
like
true.
Fighting while still trying to bring up two other people was always going to be difficult. So yeah, it's a shame for them. The other one for me is Malik Blade. Very disappointed that it didn't work out for him. Again, injury last year got the better of him. We missed most of last year again with injury. While his former tag team partner, Idris Enofe, was kind of doing his thing on Evolve. Then he got released more or less this time last year as well. So you were thinking, okay, so what do we do with him when he comes back? Which is a shame. Bags of potential, could have done great things, I think, as well. You look at even a Javon Evans, you look at EK Prosper. I think Malik kind of, when he first came, kind of had that same type of potential. We never really saw it. Definitely not in the same way we're seeing from the other two I just mentioned. But I think he had that kind of potential to do things like that or be that type of superstar. But it didn't work out. Trill London, probably another one who would fit that bill. But again, timing. The same people, the same kind of thing. How do we stand out? How do we make them stand out? How do they make themselves stand out? All of that. And then the constant comparison to Jeff Hardy was never going away.
He didn't help himself in that regard.
And I don't think he tried. And that's not to say that he didn't. I don't think he even wanted to try. And I don't say that in a negative way. It was where he found himself. It was where he found himself comfortable. It was almost like he was a purposely like a tribute act to Jeff Hardy, which isn't the baddest thing to do, but in the world of NXT, WWE just wasn't going to work. And it was said constantly over and over every single week on LFG. He's not going to change that. He's not.
Right.
I don't see him changing. I don't think it's even something he has to change, but it's just not going to work in this space of WWE. Put him on the Indies, all day long. All day long, he'll be all right. Absolutely fine.
Right.
But in the world of WWE, I don't think it's gonna work. Finally, Chris Island, never really a fan. Never really got any type of connection. Never understood who he was. Never understood his character. When they put him in the, he took off the wrestling onesie for the karate look. What? I don't know. I don't understand what that was. Even though that was Booker T's idea, I don't know what that was. And then we just saw him as security almost every week on NXT. So again, I'm not too surprised by his release. You know, we understand and we know that with the developmental, you know, they say that if a certain level of progress isn't made in their eyes, you know, after a certain amount of time, after certain, we're giving you advice and we're giving you steps and blah blah blah. If nothing's happening, then you know you've got to go. So you know that one makes a little bit more sense. Again, never great, always unfortunate. You know, I'm sure he did put work in. That's not a question, but it just wasn't enough for them over a certain period of time, and that's just where we find ourselves. But in terms of NXT, you know, we're going to talk about people moving from NXT to the main roster, but we're now still in this development space. The door is now more or less wide open in NXT for a few names to fit themselves and slot themselves in the spots and spaces on the card in NXT. Where who do you think is going to be the person? Give me maybe 2 or 3 names that you think are going to be the people who are going to stand out in NXT within the next year or 2.
Top of my list is Callie Armstrong. I mean, like, you know, we talk about the it factor and people transitioning from one sport to another. I think she is the perfect example of somebody who has that it factor that you cannot take your eyes off of, that has taken to this business, you know, like a hand in glove. I mean, think about it. The inaugural Women's Evolve champion and held on to that for quite some time. You know, in her rookie year, ends up, you know, in the PWI 250. She's somebody who you cannot ignore. And for her to ultimately lose the title to Kendall Gray, and you see how high they're touting Kendall Gray. I think Callie Armstrong, and I mean, with her debut match a couple of weeks ago, again, you look at her and you're like, oh, she's a problem. She is a problem. And here's what I think is interesting. I think she kind of fits the spot in a different way that Jada Parker would have fit. But I think, you know, Jada Parker, it's interesting. I don't want to say the time's running out for Jada, but I think, again, timing being what it is, Jada, I think her injury and her comeback has been the challenging space for her. But I think Callie Armstrong gets the chance to shoot past Jada Parker. But I think that's a possibility. I think Jada, where she could have been the face of NXT, Jada's got to start getting ready for the main roster at this point. I think there's real opportunity for Jada. But in terms of faces of NXT, absolutely, all things Callie Armstrong. And, you know, I think there's definite potential in Dark State on the men's side. It certainly looks like there's something happening, of course, with the Sugar Man, Saquon Sugars, who I think is doing great. And then, you know, the guy who right now I think is getting the opportunity to fight for the North American Championship, which that should be coming. But kind of that war that's happening right now with Dark State is establishing those two as breakaway stars to be one of the faces of NXT. And I don't even want to mention this name, but the fact that I don't want to mention this name is why I got to mention this name. Keanu Carver. He is rude. He is brutal. He is nasty. He's the guy you love to hate. And while I don't think you can send him out or would send him out to do press or anything like that, I think he is the villain that people have to beat. I mean, let's think about this. He's the guy that sent Joe Hendry packing.
Right.
Consider that. So to me, I think Keanu Carver becomes the hill that you can't climb. The guy who, you know, in NXT, you want to see somebody beat. He's also got that unpredictability that says, what does this brand look like with him at the helm? So I think you've got a number of stars that can be the face of this brand, with now there being opportunity created for all of them to be able to step up.
I'm right there with you when you mention Kelly Armstrong. In terms of the Kelly Jada kind of discussion, I think it is more than anything else. I don't think it's anything else but timing. When it comes to them two, I think it is just timing. The unfortunate timing of Jada's injury, the time that she was out, was when Kelly was destroying everyone in Evolve and establishing herself as a competitor. And then, to me, she reminds me massively of, and it's not just the move that she does, a finisher, but she reminds me massively of like a Bron Breakker. Just with just a little less intensity, but someone who could be both face and heel. And that says a lot. And I think for me, the problem with Jada, or the small problem that you have with Jada Parker, is that for me, she can't be a face. So she's loved by the people, but it feels weird for her to have face tendencies, if that makes sense. True. You know, she should be loved for being a heel, not loved for being a face. I think she's a better. And I think it flipped that around. I think that's the case with Kalani Jordan. I'm not quite there. I like that we've seen this aggressiveness, but I'm not completely convinced that she should be a heel. So yeah, that's what they have to contend with in my mind. Callie kind of feels as though she can do both quite easily, but time will tell. We'll see how that works, if we see it at all, in NXT. In terms of Dark State, Dion Lennox is my guy. He's been my guy for so long. From when Dark State came around, I knew obviously we knew a lot more from Saquon Sugars. He's been on the indies for a while. Dion Lennox kind of had this weird, bookworm gimmick that was a bit weird. But then in Dark State, we're seeing this aggressive guy, and that changed everything for me. I'm kind of seeing the breakup of Dark State, as you said, is establishing these two guys. And I think it's for good reason, in the sense where the men's division need more single stars. So to establish them separately makes a lot of sense, as opposed to establishing them in the group. And the group has been great. The group has been brilliant, but it makes sense that they're probably pushing it away, or pushing them away from each other for that reason. So Dion Lennox all day long. I'm not yet convinced about Keanu Carver. Potential's there. Everything you mentioned, potentially, yes, definitely. But I think it's still going to take a bit of time for him to find himself. But the person for me that I want to see a lot more of, I don't know if he's injured or not at the moment, is Tavion Heights. What is going on? Have they not pushed this guy to the top already? because he literally has everything. He literally has everything that you're looking for in a top star. So, you know, whether it's injury at the moment, whether they just don't know what to do with him, I'm not sure why he's not been on TV for a while, for maybe a month or two, probably a bit longer than that. But Tavion Hines for me is another one. There are so many other names we can mention. EK Prosper, another name that I mentioned earlier today as well. Jasper Troy, I think needs refining to some levels, but again, massive amount of potential that he has. There are still so many guys that are on Evolve as well. Cappuccino Jones is another one. There are so many who are ready to make that jump. Few little tweaks, bit more opportunities, you know, give us a bit more time, you know, time for them on our TV screens. And we'll see something. But I think for me, the two that stand out that I feel are ready to go like right now, Kelly Armstrong and Dion Lennox for me.
Yes.
Are right there at the top for me. Saquon Sugars is a very, very close third. He's got more experience. He can talk better than anyone else that I've mentioned. That's still in NXT now. So he's got that there as well. So we'll see what happens. This week should be very interesting in terms of that whole Dark State story. As we move up and keep moving up, we are seeing now that SOL RUCA and Ricky Saints will both officially be part of the main roster by the end of next week, by the end of this week, really. You know, we saw SOL RUCA make her appearance, main roster appearance, kind of indirectly, not on purpose, but on purpose, weirdly interrupt Liv Morgan on the Raw after Mania. Challenged her, great match, established herself. Apparently, she's going to be signing a contract live in the ring next week, Monday. And we've seen the adverts for Ricky Saints, you know, telling the people that he will be a part of SmackDown come this Friday. In your mind, in the way that they've done it, from their last matches or last few appearances on NXT to the way they've announced themselves on the main roster on SmackDown and Raw, do you feel as though it was done correctly? Could it have been done better? Would you have done it any differently at all for both people?
I like the way that it's gone. I think I will say this. I think the SOL RUCA piece would have made a little more sense if the match that happened last week on NXT actually happened at Stand and Deliver. You know, we were looking, you know what I mean? We were looking for the end. I mean, for God's sake, it took a year for us to finally get this match with Zarya and SOL RUCA. Way too long. But if that's going to be the swan song, then that match, that brutality is what should have happened at Stand and Deliver. So then we have a clear path for SOL to head to Raw. SOL fighting the Women's World Champion at Raw last week, then going back to have this match the next night at Zarya just didn't make sense because you kind of knew it was going to happen. There's no way that you're telling us that SOL RUCA is now signed to Raw and then she's going to turn around and win this match against Zarya. Just didn't make any sense. So I would have done that a little bit differently, where the match they had last week would have been the match at Stand and Deliver, and let that be the swan song for SOL RUCA. As for Ricky Saints, Ricky has done, you know, he's done all he can do in NXT. Again, he was a guy that didn't need to be there a long time, but I think he needed to be there long enough. I mean, think about it. He was there for a year. But where it made sense for him to be there for a year is obviously learning WWE television, getting people accustomed to who you are, but also that veteran presence was needed in the men's division for NXT that they did not have. They needed star power. They needed somebody who could do this. So now he gets to be the guy who took the title from OBA FEMI, which that's going to be a great calling card for him as he goes to SmackDown. I think he's going to have to just continue to be him and do his best to shed the whole idea of a kind of, hey, he looks like The Rock, comparisons to The Rock, all that kind of thing. I think by being himself, ultimately, he'll be able to do that. I think it's going to be interesting to see him and Trick Williams on the same brand. I think we got all kinds of interesting things that are going to happen with all of them. But I like the move. It makes sense since Cody is there. Will there be any on-screen chemistry with Cody? Don't know. But I mean, the match potential. It's not just a Trick. I'm looking forward to him and Trick obviously getting into it again. But in my head, I'm thinking about him and I'm thinking about Carmelo Hayes. Like what they can do together as a match would be fire. And with SmackDown just going with what they're going with, I think, again, it's a good fit for him. I think there are great match potentials there. And if it leads to a spot where perhaps he ends up against Cody or he ends up against Trick, it's a great moment. And I think both of them will do well where they're being assigned. Yeah, and then I think it keeps them away from Ethan Page so that they both can do their own thing on separate brands and be stars. So yeah, I'm good with kind of how they did things with Ricky. I think they had to do it that way just to be able to build who's there developmentally with that level of veteran presence.
For me, it makes a lot of sense in the way that they approached Ricky Saints, for sure. I don't think, I mean, he could have gone straight to the main roster from AEW. But again, as you said, you know, him learning the WWE way was very important. Yeah, they didn't want to throw him to the wolves and get it wrong, and then, you know, it all goes wrong for everyone involved. So it made sense. I still feel as though there's been something missing in that run in NXT. I think he found it once Oba was gone. He had the space to kind of do that. I think maybe the Ethan Page thing probably should have happened. Maybe should have happened earlier or lasted longer. Not sure which one. But both of them, both Ethan and Ricky, both ready for the main roster. Everyone that's been moved up from NXT, you know, all ready for the main roster. You could argue we're ready for the main roster a while ago, months ago, whatever it is. But again, I think the developmental, the time in NXT, both for, you know, them being veterans, both, you know, kind of being mentors maybe for those in developmental, being stars for, you know, the CW network for people to tune in. All of those things made a lot of sense. Yeah. The possibilities now, let's talk about SOL RUCA. I don't like the way they've done it. I don't like the way they've done it. As you said, it was kind of like this whole, okay, you're going to come out and interrupt the new women's champion. Okay, brilliant move, no problem. But then you've come out saying, oh, you didn't intend to interrupt and didn't want a match. But then you got a match. Okay, cool. Then you have a match. Great match. Brilliant match. Showed what you can do. Brilliant, love that. But then Zara gets involved and we're reminded of what's going to happen tomorrow. Right. And then after being pushed off some 20, 30 foot thing down onto a table, you're gonna be on Raw in less than 7 days. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. And here's what makes this even harder is they did exactly the same thing but better with JC Jane and Fatal Influence on Friday. Agreed. JC Jane interrupts the new women's champion purposely. You know, the group attacks the rest of the women purposely. Great match. Brilliant match. Great showing by JC Jane. Definitely showing what, you know, she's established herself over the last year or so as an NXT women's champion and should be on the main roster along with the other two as well. It made the whole SOL RUCA thing look not pointless, but lesser than it probably should have been. And that for me is a problem. All that said, I don't think in the long run it will damage SOL RUCA, but in the short term, the person I'm thinking has more potential in terms of how WWE see them is JC Jane over Sol Ruca right now. That's how I see that.
So I'll say this. I think that, first of all, you're right in that. I mean, I totally agree with you in how they presented JC Jane and Fatal Influence. I think last week when we were talking about who needs to go to SmackDown's women's division, JC Jane and Fatal Influence was who we mentioned.
Perfect.
It added something beautiful to that women's roster over there. And immediately, I mean, if you think about the heat that JC Jane got night one, that was Dominic Mysterio kind of heat. And it was like, ooh, to get that straight away, to be able to hold her own against Rhea, and I think here was the other difference in that. Number one, we knew JC was done with NXT by that move. Secondly, you don't throw JC under the bus by having her lose. The match ends up ending inconclusive because of interference with Fatal Influence. And I think that, again, allows JC to be presented as, oh, she should be here. I think, Soul, what they tried to do with Soul is what they tried to do with Stephanie Vaquer last year when they introduced her, to the main roster with a match against Io Sky straight out of WrestleMania. Io still the champion, but you have, again, the JC Jane treatment where somebody interferes and we don't see the conclusion of the match. That should have happened for Sol Ruca. So again, we see the star power of Sol Ruca, and we're not just caught up in, oh, she hit the Soul Snatcher, So I think, to your point, there were different ways to do that. I do think there were two different agendas as well. Agenda one is establishing not just JC Jane, but all of Fatal Influence. And I think with Soul, because she didn't have all of those things, plus Soul has been featured in so many other things, from the Royal Rumble to John Cena's final match, like all of those spaces, and Saturday Night's Main Event, Evolution. I think how you present that is a little different, though I do agree she should not have lost that match. It should have been inconclusive in terms of how it ended. In fact, if you're going to do the Zarya interference, that should have happened in the ring so that there could have been a disqualification, as opposed to it being out of the ring and it costs her the match. But I again say, knowing that she was going back to NXT the next night, it's kind of, I think, took things from all of it,
Yeah, and that's all I think it is as well. Like, just that little bit of detail. If that, if it was a thing where we didn't see Sol on the Monday, last week Monday, then she had the match on the Tuesday, lost in the way that she did. The match was brilliant. The conclusion, amazing, beautiful. But then we see her making her first real appearance and interrupting Liv Morgan on Monday. That may have been a very different type of thing, or a little bit more believable, or what have you. And then at least then as well, even if it was a thing where we showed that, Liv Morgan wasn't going to be a clean and needed interference, we've got Roxy and Raquel to do that as well. So it's not even like it needed a Zarya either. So it could have been done a little bit better. But at the same time, here's the other different thing as well. In the way that it was executed was very similar, but of course was trying to establish, one, Soul is a face, and then two, JC Jane's obviously a heel. So that in its changes a whole lot of things as well, in terms of the perspective from the fans and all that kind of stuff as well. But again, I don't see it being a long-term problem in any way, shape, or form.
All right.
The execution for me just should have and could have been better. And I think the way it happened with JC Jane just amplified how much better it could have been with Sol Ruca. Going back to Ricky Saints, again, I said I think during his time in NXT, I think that there should have been a little bit more time, or certain things probably could have been done a little bit earlier. But the prospect of Saints on SmackDown, and as you mentioned, him with Trick Williams, him with Carmelo, him and Cody Rhodes, and let's not forget him and Royce Keys.
Yes,
That too, whether they are friends, whether they're not, just any type of interaction. Let's see what that could be, and then just so many others. I think he offers both excitement, but at the same time a little bit of worry, because remember we mentioned earlier about people coming in at the same time being very similar. I've got a feeling in the minds of the writers, in the minds of WWE, Ricky Saints is similar in their mind to a Trick Williams, or similar to a Carmelo Hayes. So where and how do they find that difference for each of them to stand out in their different ways? So that's going to be interesting. In a way, a little bit worrying, but at the same time, if done well, it could be absolutely amazing. The other thing I want to talk about, we mentioned this last week, and I really thought, and I just knew Trick was going to have a manager. He's going to have some kind of yappy, scrappy dude type person. And I really didn't think it was going to be Little Yachty, but now we know it is. We said last week, maybe not him, maybe someone else, but Trick doesn't need anyone, but now we know it is him. How are you feeling when you heard Yachty mention those words and say that he's sticking around and he's going to be in the corner of Trick Williams for the foreseeable future?
In the words of Florida Evans from Good Times, damn. Like, why? We don't need this. We don't need this. I saw it and I went, no. Trick doesn't need a mouthpiece. He does it well himself. Now we have to endure Lil Yachty. And listen, I saw an interview where Paul Heyman was just like, man, the respect that Lil Yachty has for the business is top tier. Like, great. But we don't need him every week on our television. We don't. So, no, I didn't like it at all. I don't know where it could go, but none of it has interest to me. If Trick Williams needs a manager, he needs an established manager. Somebody, here's my thought. If you're going to have a manager, and I say this to artists and the like, that manager needs to take you places that you can't take yourself.
Right.
So the question to me is, where's Lil Yachty going to take Trick Williams that he currently can't take himself? Maybe he'll take Trick to the recording studio and put him on one of his projects, which might get a bit more notoriety, but that's not going to help him in terms of in-ring, not at all. I don't like it at all. I don't. And hey, Lil Yachty, appreciate you loving WWE, appreciate your connection and friendship with Trick Williams, but this is highly unnecessary. And I hope that it doesn't damage the star power that is already Trick. Like, I don't get this. I don't.
It's as I said last week. I just had this feeling that there was going to be someone beside Trick Williams going forward, and having that type of persona. As you said, usually as a manager, or usually when there is a manager involved, it is that whole thing of taking them to the next level. Or if it's another superstar, it's someone who's trying to kind of ride the coattails, I guess, of Trick Williams' success and find success themselves. So someone like, maybe if he was still about, the only person I can think of is like BG James from LFG, that annoying little for nothing. would talk all day long. Someone like that type of persona where he needed Trick Williams in order to find some kind of success would have made sense.
Yeah.
But again, yeah, the whole little, I'm just like, why him? It was nice for it to be a thing for Mania, no problem. But for it to be something that we're doing moving forward, like you said, I don't see how it helps a Trick Williams. You know, and as great as Trick Williams is and has been, and the potential that he has, it's the fact that he's new to the main roster. If he was someone that has been, if it was a Carmelo in a heel state, then okay, because Carmelo's kind of had time on the main roster, all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's a little easier to take, but yeah, I don't see the purpose, the point, what it brings, what it helps. I don't get it. But again, as you said, you know, to be fair, as you said, you know, Little Yachty is there he does appreciate the business. You know, I'll give him his credit for taking the haluva kicks and the beat downs that he's received so far. But if I didn't see him again next week I wouldn't care. I wouldn't miss him.
No.
Simple as. I wouldn't miss him. And again, I don't think Trick needs that whatsoever. I don't know if it's going to hinder him. Necessarily. But it's definitely not going to help anything. That's for sure. It's not going to help anything at all. But we are where we are. We don't make the rules, unfortunately. So we have to just deal with it.
We don't.
We have to just deal with it.
Exactly.
The other person, of course, who has established himself on the main roster was OBA FEMI, established himself in the biggest way possible, beat Brock at WrestleMania, you know, forced Brock to retire. But we now find ourselves in this space of what do we do with an OBA FEMI? The first thing he does, okay, the Raw after Mania comes out, one line, drops the mic, walks out, poetic, beautiful, brilliant. But again, the question still remains, what do we do with an OBA FEMI? This week, we see him backstage with a little bit of a thing with Grayson Waller, and I was like, oh God, here we go. We're going all the way backwards to backstage with lower card stars. We're gonna do squash matches. Okay, not the baddest thing in the world, it's not. But this is what we're doing.
Right.
Has the match, wins the match. But then after that, he announces that there is going to be basically a weekly open challenge. I call it an open challenge with OBA FEMI. Do you think this is going to help OBA FEMI, or does this hinder OBA FEMI? Are we going to have constant squash matches with lower card talent, or are we going to have one or two more established stars come against OBA? And if so, what then?
Yeah, so I think this is actually going to accomplish something. And here's what it is. Clearly, OBA FEMI is one of the hottest stars in all of WWE. And when we talk about what WrestleMania is supposed to be able to establish, WrestleMania absolutely solidified OBA FEMI as the next big thing and one of WWE's biggest stars, period. I love the fact that his promo basically said, hey, listen, while all the champions are tied up with other contenders, here's what I need to do. I think him doing that answered a lot of the questions that people had and puts us in a space to know, okay, here's what they're going to do with him. And it's good. I think what this does, this open challenge, it does a couple of things. Number one, it gives people the opportunity to attempt to step up, which we're okay with, because this now becomes like the Undertaker streak. We're just here to see how he's going to beat the people. That's what we're going to see. And we saw creatively how he did that last night. I mean, taking Grayson Waller's signature move from the outside of the ring to the inside and catching him and throwing him, brilliant. Brilliant. Wow. So that's one thing. The second thing it does is it keeps OBA on our TVs. Now, last week I said we didn't need to see OBA every week. I was wrong. And here's why. Because we need as much WWE cameras and footage to capture everybody doing the OBA strut. All ages, all races, all backgrounds. All of you need to strut. We need to capture that. Now, there's another thing that happened that nobody's talking about, and I noticed it the second that I saw it. If you go back to the now opener of all things WWE, last night was the first time I saw this. OBA and Trick are now in the opening. And that is a game changer. They are in the, they do the then, now, and forever. They're in the now. And they are the only real new stars in the now. You had the whole, moment of the sitting down pipe bomb with CM Punk. Cody's in there. No, this is the first time we've seen that level of change. That tells you just how WWE views their current stars. And that clearly OBA and Trick are their current stars. So OBA right now is in a great space. And this open challenge gives some of these mid-card folks an opportunity to have a hill that they can't climb, And so we can sit there and go, okay, who's going to be crazy enough to step up to OBA? All right, let's, and they started doing something last night that I haven't heard them do yet. And that was the OBA's gonna kill you chant. Let's go. Let's go. This is all the energy that we need for OBA Femi. And so it's setting us up for some bigger names to ultimately come and challenge him, because he's going to need something to do between now and SummerSlam. And so let's go. Let's get that. I think we're going to get to the point where, he'll likely go and win King of the Ring this summer, so that it will qualify him for the SummerSlam moments. And now is where we'll start to see Jimmy and Jay show up. We'll start to see some bigger names that he's going to run through. And I wouldn't be surprised, and this is, I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere between now and SummerSlam, one of the people that ends up stepping up for this challenge is Jacob Fatu. An OBA Femi versus Jacob Fatu match. Take all of our money. Take it all. That Jacob has this moment where he's like, I couldn't beat the tribal chief, and I'm not going to let anybody else beat the tribal chief. And he steps up to OBA Femi, and, we do this maybe around the July pay-per-view, premium live event, Money in the Bank, whatever that is. And now we got a moment where we've got two of our big men. And now you have somebody where you go, oh, now I don't know that OBA can run. Now, OBA's going to probably run through Jimmy, and he's probably going to run through Jay. But I don't see OBA running through Jacob Fatu like a hot knife through butter. Now we got some challenges. And so, we're going to sit through these next couple of months every week, somebody coming out, getting decimated. But as we get closer to SummerSlam and OBA becomes a number one contender, now we're going to get some quality matches.
It's going to be interesting, because one of the questions I was going to ask is, who are these people that are going to come out to OBA Femi, week in, week out? And, it's more than likely the first few are going to be people that he's going to run through quite easily.
Sure.
I don't know who these people are going to be really, but, like a Grayson Waller was on Monday, it's going to be a very similar type of thing. But eventually, I'm hoping it leads to some kind of feud or a bigger match, at a PLE, or when, as you said, when King of the Ring comes around, that would then establish him for hopefully, going forward the World Championship. It should be interesting. It should be interesting. There is the positive of it being OBA Femi on our TV screens every single week, and you know, and all the visuals that we're going to get from that, whether that be the crowd, whether that be in-ring action, whatever it is establishing that. But yeah, I'm glad that it is still something for him to do without him having to do much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, because the struggle, what feud do we establish for OBA FEMI up until a SummerSlam, a Money in the Bank, whatever it is? What do we do for now up until then? And I think this might be the only answer, because in terms of feuds, like any decent feud would probably be too big. So, for example, if it's Jacob Fatu, if it's a Gunther, if it's even a Braun Breaker, a Seth Rollins, a CM Punk, it all kind of would feel a bit too big, too early, maybe, to then keep, you know, have another one after that. And, you know, for him to overthrow those people may not necessarily damage them, but I don't know. Okay, maybe damage them in a way. So doing this might be the only answer to the OBA problem at the moment. And then hopefully it gives us time to then make other things happen. So it makes sense. It does make sense. It does make sense. And it's going to be very interesting to see some of the names that do pop up. Do you see anyone kind of challenging OBA, which then helps establish them a little bit? So kind of give them, not beat OBA. I don't see anyone beating him. And let me say, I think this is going to be a nice way for them to kind of do the whole Goldberg win streak type thing as well. Do you see anyone who's on the Raw roster who could challenge OBA maybe in a few weeks' time, and it would help establish them? So we, you know, gives OBA a bit of a run for his money a little bit, and then we're like, oh, this guy can go. Like, do you see anyone kind of fitting in that space?
I think this is going to be that moment that reestablishes Javon Evans. We're going to get the call back to those NXT title matches. And he gets to try to climb that mountain one more time. I think that's going to be one of those moments where we now get to see how tough Javon Evans is. We've seen, you know, he's resilient, you know, but the way OBA challenged him at NXT is something we haven't seen on the main roster. So just imagine the visual of OBA throwing Javon over the top rope through that announce table again, this time on Raw. And then this guy gets up. It is literally Jeff Hardy versus The Undertaker from 2002. Like, it's literally that. And that is what made Jeff Hardy. And I think we're going to get to see that again for Javon, where now, you know, whether he wins the Intercontinental title or not, that moment needs to happen to put him into, oh no, he should be in world title contention because he took the ruler to the limit. You know, his body gave out on him, but he kept taking punishment. Like, that's the kind of thing. I think it'll be fun moments where we'll have some people from NXT try to challenge. I think we'll get some people from TNA who try to challenge as well. But that Javon moment from Monday Night Raw is going to be a special one.
I saw someone say this, and I forget completely who said it. But the question was asked, you know, who would be the person to overthrow OBA FEMI eventually, however that is, whether that's a title, whether that's just beating an undefeated streak or whatever else. And Javon Evans was the name that was mentioned. And I think for me, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. If they both kind of do their thing separately and they come together at some point, whether it's via this open challenge, whether it's the final of the King of the Ring, you know, or just some massive, just a match at a big PLE, like a SummerSlam maybe. You know, I think that the rivalry between those two definitely needs to be something to savor for the next few years. Over the next year, like I said, you know, they do their own thing. They find their successes and they clash at some point. And I think it definitely needs to be OBA winning the first time around. But then when they eventually do, maybe when the stakes are higher, maybe when there's a championship involved, you know, maybe if they're the final two at the Royal Rumble, you know, something like that, then the second time they meet, it has to then be Javon Evans. And I think that would be the moment where we're like, okay, Javon is now that guy. Javon is now ready. And all of those things there. I think, for me, I feel as though it should have happened in NXT, but the fact that it didn't, and he came so close, the only person that came so close, and I know there are two other people that beat him, but that beat OBA FEMI, that being Ricky Saints and Tony D'Angelo, but it wasn't in the same way as if it was one of the matches that Javon Evans had with OBA FEMI.
Right.
Yeah, I think that definitely needs to be something that they need to keep going on the main roster and establish that as a very real rivalry. So that should be interesting to see if they cross paths again on the main roster. That should definitely be very interesting indeed.
Yeah.
Oof. There's a lot of things, you know, in talking about the people who are coming up in NXT, you know, those who are now on the main roster, those who have recently established themselves, Trick, Oba, Javon, Carmelo as well, you know, that, you know, when you look at it, there are so many guys now on both brands. The Street Profits are back as well. You know, there are still so many things that we can see happening. You know, I don't think we will have this whole problem. Obviously, we've kind of killed the problem already now, but we won't have this whole problem of no black single stars on PLEs for however long. And I don't see that being an issue now. It's going to be interesting how they work themselves around, especially SmackDown, with, you know, the amount of guys that we have and the type of guys that we have with their bravado and all that kind of thing. But I think we're gonna be good. I think this was, you know, when a couple of years when you know, you've been saying it almost week in, week out, guys, let's just slow down. It takes time. We've got to wait. Things happen in their seasons. This is now the end of that drought that we were kind of suffering through for a while, and now we're in this fruitful moment. This is harvest season.
Yes, it is, sir. Yes, it is.
You know what I mean? And we're picking the fruits. We're going to see who's ripe, rotten, who's ready to go, who's going to feed us. This is harvest season for black wrestlers in WWE. And I think we're back in this nice space now. A little bit more exciting. There's things to look out for. There's things to get excited about. And two of them are literally the biggest stars on our TV right now. And then we're adding a Ricky Saints, we're adding a Javon Evans. They're trying to build up a Royce Keys. We're bringing back the Street Profits. The New Day are still doing their thing. Like, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good. And Bianca and Naomi are having babies. Let's go. Let's go.
Right. Next generation.
Oh, Lord. Well, guys, on that note, we have come to the end of our show for this week. Gerard, tell the people where they can find you and all your spaces, my friend.
For sure. You can find me at Bonnerfied across all of the social spaces: Instagram, Facebook, X, Threads, TikTok, all of those spaces. Just dropped a new podcast episode today with a bit of a review of the new Michael Jackson biopic. So definitely check that out. And then I've got a big announcement coming up this week. So stay tuned. This is going to be a lot of fun. It's all happening at Bonnerfied.
Love that. Guys, you know, you can find us here every single week, every Tuesday here on the Black Wrestling Alliance YouTube channel for WrstlXtyra. Of course, you can find me on Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram, and also clips from WrstlXtyra as well, of course, on Black Wrestling Alliance on TikTok. Make sure you find us there. Follow, subscribe, and all the rest of the good things as well. Keep sharing what we're doing. and continue to support us in what we're doing. Guys, thank you for joining us, and we will see you again next week.